Scooping fuel from an overturned petrol tanker is not just risky, it is downright suicidal. Petrol, diesel, kerosene, and gas are life. Whenever you see an overturned tanker of people attempting to scoop fuel, flee immediately or alert the relevant way being otherwise. Remember,
EFM, the sound of
I wish there were other ways.
And development. We have made 4 to 5:30 p.m. about public service.
Mr. President, there is nowhere I can say that.
Give the citizens the chance to make their political decisions. Constant demand for quality leadership from those they voted into office.
Look at us now, there is nothing. We are starving. Tinubu should please do something.
It's also important to having a Nigeria of every politicians on issues around politics, policies, governance, and leadership. Every Monday to Friday, we discuss the situations.
Things seems.
Good evening, Nigeria, and welcome to another engaging episode of The Situation Room here on mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. We're talking national issues, we're talking matters as they arise, just like the title depicts. The Situation Room, if it is a situation, experts across different sectors of the country so that they can provide their expert opinion on these matters and sort of important national issues. My name is Sage Babalola, and today, like every other cases of data protection and privacy in Nigeria, well, I should inform you, bro, like the Gen Zs like to call them, and they'll be talking to us about data privacy and data protection. And then from 4:30 to 5 p.m, we'll be talking about the education sector. Million result released scored below 200. What is the fate of the education sector in Nigeria on the intricacies of data privacy and protection in Nigeria? Now, we're in an era where information travels faster than light, and there's a need for us to start to safeguard our personal data. It has become very information, which should be the forefront of the discourse for today. But there's still a lot of challenges we need to grapple with. How equipped are we? To the next part of our conversation. There are a lot of students who had complained of having a difficult time while writing their JAM, their UTME, because the system was shutting down. So we have not yet perfected even our understanding of technology. And we're still dealing with the fact that all the information we put online might fall into the hands of controls. Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, they are threatening to withdraw their operations from Nigeria because we have been in a legal tussle with this using the information of Nigerians without authorization. And so we have decided to use that as the poster story to dissect the complex issue. Obiloba Adewumi, he is the managing director. Hold yourself and know when to put your personal information, where to put your
Fine, thank you. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, have an understanding of what data privacy even means. Cases, paying for things, even checking your school results, pretty much every aspect of our life.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Now, personal information. Properly securing for individuals' personal information, regardless of information, to be resting place, policy, basis. So that is basically what data protection and privacy is.
Data protection laws in comparison with global standards. And I also would like to reference the whole situation. Has been fined $220 million because they failed to comply to EU general data protection laws. Even Apple, Amazon take information. So why is it that these crimes are very easily, this breach of data crime, so to speak, because, well, the court of law have found them guilty, are so easy to commit in this part of the world? And I want you to reiterate the implications, because people do not understand the gravity of what their data can be used for. So tell us.
Well, thank you so much for that. So the implications of people's data being in other countries as well. Now, the data protection regulations and laws, 2% of either 2% of your global revenue for the preceding year, or 10 million naira, or 2% of your revenue for the preceding year, or 2 million. Process data of over a certain threshold, you fall at the 2% or 2 million naira range. Now, this being said, right, you can imagine why these fines sound so raking trillions of naira. So imagine being fined 2% of your penalty and things that apply specifically in Nigeria. This fine issued to data protection in Nigeria, and that investigation was
saying that the fines are this heavy because these are corporate to meet, you're trying to met on them. But then let's have a conversation. Is the mother company for Instagram, for Facebook, I believe, for likely would not be able to use Facebook anymore. And half of at least a quarter, millions annually from their phone shop, as I call it. And so what will be the broader economic and national implication if Meta makes good of its threat?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Well, I mean, the implications on a lot of these platforms that Meta offers. However, to give my own individual perspective on, and why do I say so? For example, right now I am in Abuja. NDPC is currently for this conference in these organizations. NDPC is the one that regulates. In order for Meta to abide by the forward, data is not breached anymore. So, yes.
All right. So
no, I don't think. I honestly do not find in several other countries as well. The governing or the how can you do better, which is really what data protection is about. Most organizations, most regulators don't want to keep people out of the economy. This will cause loss of jobs and a lot of other things that could make the economy dip. The point is, and the point of data protection is to make everybody aware and to help everybody do better within
Nigeria and how strong that framework is of foreigners. And we were told that that system was hacked. We had names of foreigners, people that were not in that situation. There are times where links will be sent online and people just click the link out of curiosity, and the next thing you know, they are shut out of their account, or spam emails are sent. You click the link and it's gone. You click a link, there's a virus on your computer, amongst other things. I'm oblivious to what these things are. For example, if I get a spam email, I'm informed enough to know not to open it, but there is somebody in one corner. What do we need to do to protect people from making mistakes so that their data is to allow themselves to be scammed of their own?
Awareness to everybody, to let them understand that one of the things that like you said, a lot of people in rural areas don't even know what their rights are. Sure that people have more of a deeper knowledge and know how and when their data can be used and when they can attending, where NDPC has made it a mandate to actually ensure that awareness is carried out properly and up to the ground level. Has come to make pledges about how NIMC will do better concerned, but I can honestly say that we are educating everybody down to these even rural areas as well.
But then there are a lot of applications that if you do not agree to the provisions that after they request your name, your biometrics, your card number, it just auto refills, which means that if another person has access to your Instagram account, they can make purchases on Instagram using your card information. A hard place, because if I don't agree to allow you use my information, you will not allow me, such that you do not twist in
asked every time, and this is actually more of a general issue. Do not agree, then you cannot
use it.
Yes, and really on a general, on a global level, that means laws now around the world need to sit down and realize that this is a loophole, leaving it to just having to accept whatever they accept. If the laws are more strict who are individuals to use their first do so, but as for now, in the law in Nigeria and are using exponentially. So there isn't really any regulation to that effect, or there isn't any regulation in that particular these platforms on you. And all we just need to do is to make sure the laws are more specific in that aspect, so that we can still have a
Director Cyberline Limited, a situation room, and we're talking about the via radio guarding, or important. I mean, I do remember that the United States and TikTok had quite the battle because you can understand the kind of relationship that exists between the United States and China against the United States, which is an indication that access to stand that collection of personal identity of that nation, so that you can drive home the
very much be used for very important for us. One thing we must know, when we download a new application or we go into a website, there's this big thing that pops up with small fund and everybody listening at aspects, because the law and the regulations are usually so long and so cumbersome because they don't want to summarize anything. However, they go in that privacy policy. So always try to have a read of that privacy policy, or at least a basic understanding that information too, so that you will not suffer any harm, loss, or breach in the future.
And a few weeks ago is how people were able to access their account and clear out all the money in the account. And I don't know what you're doing, gingerbread man. But then as we begin to round off this conversation, talk to us about the importance of public-private partnership. Sadly, putting the cart before the horse. You are focusing on hardware, but you're not focusing on educating the people that will use that hardware. Because when you set up an ICT center and you want to introduce AI and other things, mind you are talking to their curriculum. They're parts of the South, they're parts of the North, they're parts of the East, where there's some people who do you think that we need to reevaluate the teaching level? And this, I understand, is not something that the government can do on their own. There's some spaces that are still not involve the private sector.
Our public-private partnership is something that's what in the country are the licensed private institutions. This makes things go a bit more smoothly, because we are all aware that the private sector, right, for us to adopt this section of the NDPR and the NDPA, the regulation has grown in 2025. So I believe this is something that agriculture, the Ministry of North Resources, I think this is a very, very adoptable model for all parts and all sectors.
You're currently at the conference. You had to step away very briefly, but this is Tᴏɪᴜᴜ Ade about data privacy in the coming weeks, as people are looking to see if Meta would make good of their threat. Although you're very confident that they would not make that. Instead, they will reach a too grave for us to bear, especially because we do not have.
Thank you so much. I would love to make that happen.
Yes, thank you. Madam Ify, Prince YS, and John Bernard Ohi, all of you that send messages to us when we're doing treasurer are able to reach a compromise, because the court have actually fined them $220 million. Name, they ask you, sometimes you want to pay for things on Facebook, you put your card number, you put your PIN, and sometimes if this information is accessed by the wrong people, you just lose money. You notice that money is missing from your account, you think it's the bank, but you were the one who put your information on a site, and then you click it. Next thing you know, money is missing from your account. Next thing you know, you don't have access to your account anymore. These things are very important, especially if it's to scam them. And in some very difficult cases, or in some very extreme cases, the information of people in a country have been used to wage war against another country. That is how critical this conversation is, and that's why we decided to have it. But women's sector in Nigeria, 1.5 million people sector. Why are students failing in mass? What is going to happen to the employer if they cannot even pass basic examinations? Are we ready? Are we technologically ready, as we have begun to digitize the education sector? We're still streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube at Mainland 98.3 FM. My name is Sage, the education sector in Nigeria. Don't go anywhere.
Become more and more crowded. It's time to break it open and really stand out. Broken Air is here.
On Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos.
Between October 2024 and January 2025, more than 265 lives have been lost to fuel tanker explosions in Nigeria. Guess what? Twice of that number have perished in the last 2 years. In more than half a decade, tragedy had feasted on many human bodies in many Nigerian states in their countless attempts to scoop fuel from overturned tankers. Ask yourself, is it worth the risk? The answer is a resounding no. Scooping fairly flammable one spark and disaster strikes. Ignorance or hardship cannot justify pulling your own life on the line to stay alive. Whenever you see an overturned tanker of people attempting to scoop fuel, flee immediately or alert the relevant authorities to secure the area and prevent a potential explosion. It is better to stay alive for your loved ones who depend on you than any way being otherwise. Remember, fuel scooping is deadly.
Of Lagos.
Things seem anxious and uncertain. I understand the hardship you face. I wish there were other ways, but there is not. If there were,
In our quest to bring to the table issue-based conversation around nationhood and development, continue to build the narrative about public service and accountability.
Mr. President, this Senate needs to know. Mr. President, this Senate needs, if I cannot say these things on this floor, sir, I better...
Voted into office.
Look at us now, there is nothing. We are starving. Tinubu should please do something.
Opinion makers, business professionals, and politicians on issues around politics, policies, governance, and leadership every Monday to Friday from 4 to 5:30 p.m. on your super dial mainland 98.3 FM. We'll welcome you.
Name is Sage Babalolawi. Recently, we previously had a conversation about data privacy and protection in Nigeria, the intricate market. It has an effect on our security, amongst other things. And so we also have a role to play. Struggle with Meta, the mother company for Facebook, Instagram, and also WhatsApp. Will they pull out of Nigerians? Well, they've reacted, and let's see if they would make good of their threat. How will the government sector, as I said earlier, the uncertainty of the education sector out of school? It's a staggering figure, and it signifies a very profound challenge for arrived here. We will talk about the critical steps that we must take to rectify this situation. It should not run society, and that is why I've decided to bring on the show this evening Dr. Peter education system. Why
pleasure to join you on the show.
Yes, thank you, sir. Before we talk about the mass failure, the statistics for JAMB, I want us to talk about structural deficit amongst other things. I mean, I did check the 2025 Nigeria 0.70 trillion naira. Which exactly do you think is responsive funding?
Yeah, certainly it's not just the issue of capacity at the highest level of governance in the education system in Nigeria. They know little or nothing about education. And unfortunately for us, they are the ones who superintend the affairs of the sector. And coming up with policies and the system and appointments in the sector are made generally on the basis of commissioners of education, chief inspectors of education, as individuals who didn't study education and have never for even 1 hour spent time in any classroom will flourish. That's where we are, and we will continue to struggle with these problems for so long as we continue to permit interlopers to governors.
Students who took JAM scored below 200, and we have the reactions that have trailed this mass failure. Teachers, it is what you put in that you will get. If the quality of teachers are not good enough, the quality of students are still using outdated curriculum to teach the students, and that is why some of the questions they meet when they go for external exams are alien to them. What exactly would you attribute this mass failure to? Is it the inadequacies or the inefficiency of the teaching force? Would you say that it's because of outdated curriculum, or it's just sold to younger people that education cannot give you wealth?
Have come together to bring us to the classroom. People who once is significantly lower in terms of standard and complexity. They go and write exam that is significantly more complex without better information, without better quality in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. And of course, even in those cities, the average Nigerian child is not living places we call cities. The average Nigerian child is a child of a parent who fund that child with an exam that is done exclusively on computer. Also about the fact that the infrastructure that you are then. We are not running an equitable system, so most of the time what you find is that the children who do above 300 in this exam we are discussing are children of the elite, who have been using computer from kindergarten. So the children in rural communities and the children of the poor, sometimes they are very smart children and they also probably have the knowledge, but they lack, children are these days distracted because of the idea that education is scam. So everybody is looking for money on the internet. So they use those who manage to find phones, they use their phones to do Instagram, TikTok, etc. But that's not the fundamental problem, because we also know a lot of children. So our children are not that the average teacher in Nigeria is not grow and flourish. The average Nigerian teacher, most of them haven't passed through an education system that has prepared them for how to teach in a modern society. So they are teaching children, you have to demonstrate understanding of the knowledge you have. Most of them fall short. So it's not the fault of the child. In some sense, you can say it's the fault of the teacher, but you cannot blame the teacher because the teacher and then children will understand, be able to apply, so that when they are confronted with practical problems, they will be able to money to the wrong person. You discover that he wastes their money. So for funding, yes, we need more of it, but before you can start pumping more money into education, you first have to sanitize the system by weeding out all the interlopers who are playing critical roles in the education system. Then bring in more funds and the right people, the right, as you say, the square.
Unity is my guest on this segment of the Situation Room, where we're talking about the uncertainty that unfortunately bedevil the education sector. And we're talking about what the problems are so that we can prefer the appropriate solution to these problems. They need extra attention. They need a curriculum that puts into consideration their situation. We have dyslexic children who have a hard time understanding. But I'm glad you mentioned policy. Now, there are some countries that set aside special system. Do we have a structure like that in Nigeria? There are very talented children who are having a hard time because of a condition, the specific needs of the children that we're teaching.
Yeah, so the students whose special needs are front and center in what teachers do. So we haven't started in that big on preparing teachers to be able to take adequate care of special needs children. Again, there are some cultural challenges that are associated with what the problem stand. The tendency for us to blame the devil, the tendency for us to take the child to church and put the child through deliverance because of lack of knowledge. But those of us who do research and then who do education as a profession, we know that all those practices compound the problems of the child. We make children who are normal in their own. I graciously had my education training in circumstances where a psychologist is posted to a school just because of one child, and that's what the child did to be met. So every child matters. In Nigeria, individuals don't matter, and that's why you find teachers, burdened with the task of having to. Circumstances, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to minister. Is autistic, who is grappling with several other challenges that the average teacher has not been trained to understand what such children are going through. So we haven't started. Nobody's thinking about their needs, and the government people who are running the politicians who are running the system, when they do, sometimes have similar problems in terms of having children who are confronted with such challenges, are passing through. They don't really care because they don't wear the shoes and therefore do not know where the shoes fit. So we have to take ourselves to a point where we have to compel our politicians that, to the level that if they have to run the system, that has to work for all. Some systems, work better than others. I do educational research in Finland, and what I find when I go to such kinds of places to do research is that the child of a minister is in the same classroom with the child of a messenger, with the child of education or minister of finance. Their child will sit in the same classroom with the child of a pepper seller, of a market woman who is selling vegetables. So everybody studies in the school that is very close to where you live. But for all of us, they will find the incentive to make sure that these places are habitable, these places are environment. But that's not where we are, and it's not looking like we're going to get there anytime soon.
I mean, some have defended it that before they became politicians, they were well-to-do and they could on their own afford to send their children abroad, so they don't have to put their own children through the education sector. And I would explain that. A child is in primary 1, you by one abracadabra, you move that child and skip the child to primary 2 or primary 3, and then you jump primary 6, you get into the university, you're 12 years old, and they don't know how to navigate it even with their first class in their hands. And some parents will say they're doing this because parents, which would mean that you graduated at 19 years old and started working immediately. And so parents are trying to speed up the education of their education sector and put realistic age limits, because if we go through the normal system, you're supposed to graduate at least 22, 23, do your NYSC. So at 24 years old, you're ripe for the market. And so they stop putting this unrealistic age. They're educated, but they are not knowledgeable and cannot function even within that system. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of these things we see. I'm a social scientist, so I work with evidence. That expects you to come and take their job at the age of.
No, I didn't say banks. Just generally employment. Generally.
So I just generating things that and make age of 24 and demonstrate 5 years experience. That's not true. We don't have evidence that supports that, really. So an employer can ask you to take a job when you're 27 and demonstrate 3-4 years experience, and that would be realistic. Is that parents are overestimating for us. Ignorant school leaders and teachers encourage these parents to believe that the recent JAM result that prompted this conversation we're having has nullified that assumption. We don't have evidence that proves it because JAM decided in this particular cycle to let some of those children who are claiming that they're gifted children to come and write the exam. So they allowed underage children to write this current exam. And they discovered that they couldn't find up to 2% of these children who demonstrated exceptional ability. But this is the exceptional ability. That's one side of it. So that is a wrong assumption. Parents overestimate how gifted their children are, and then take the child to secondary school and probably pay for only 4 years and let the child write a school certificate exam. By the time the child is in first, class accuracy is about trying to do better than neighbors, and these things put children through unwarranted experiences that make them lose confidence in themselves. And so there's a way the brain is. You make the child grapple with more when they are in grade 3, primary 3. By the time they get to secondary school, even if they manage to continue to do well academically, you have to recognize that it's not only academics that we do in the education system. The child will fail, when bullying has continued to increase because most of these children who are jumping classes are not as simple as the things you hear on the internet. It's not true that employers are the only drivers for what is going on.
To ban discrimination, age discrimination, or there were complaints of discrimination. People who were 30, they wouldn't employ them. And in 2022, the Senate did put forward legislature banning age limits for a job. We need to put in place to take care of these problems. We've highlighted the problems. How do we solve the problems? I know that no one shoe fits all, no one size fits all.
For a start, we need to get our educational philosophy right. As we speak, some players in the industry, like policymakers, hear about philosophy, but they don't know what it means. First, we have to tell ourselves our energies in pursuit of a flourishing state, a flourishing economy, a polity that is egalitarian, that works for everyone. Are we going to use education to make us hear to all education stakeholders, including parents, school leaders, teachers, and of course, education inspectors and employers who are the ones who will eventually consume what is. Education is an indispensable tool for provoking national development, and that if you continue to just do politics and worry about it, will you continue to grapple with poverty? Will you continue to have a country where the money a Norwegian earns in 1 year will take a Nigerian 2 lifetimes to earn? This is not where we education stakeholders, so that everybody knows how important it is that we solve this problem. So if you deal with that, then invest in teachers, pay them well. But as we speak today, even the country completely, because the average teacher doesn't even in Nigeria doesn't end up with all who studied engineering and who, because they couldn't find created human capacity, a sense of sacrifice to put more money into education for free, because it's our country and we have seen how wonderful education is, because it has transformed our lives, and we work for even other countries, and we have seen how what we contribute at the global stage is making a difference all over the world. So we can do the same thing for our country, and we'll be happy to make that contribution if we're given
Peter Ogudoro, thank you so much for your altruism. First of all, your desire to share a time there was free education. I don't know that time, but at least we have about learning, unlike what we have now, students sitting down on the floor being beaten by the rain at the place where they're supposed to be learning. He's an education researcher, leader of Nigeria Teachers Community. Dr. Peter, thank you so very much, and you have a wonderful evening. From data privacy and protection to the education, our import, export, through all the other sector. You'd be surprised that poverty would lead to a lack of use, exacerbates crime. Crime becomes banditry and terrorism. And so you can see that there is a link, an established link between when one sector fails, all the sectors. 091360000410. Again, 09136000041360000430. We're streaming live on Facebook 98.3 FM. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, kids, get ready for a day filled with fun and excitement. On 31st of May 2025 at the Mainland 98.3 FM Children's Day Party. This is a call to all children, parents, and fun lovers. Let's party together. Join us at Mainland 90 who will be joining us, bringing her loving spirit and joy. Special appearance, the talented Gloria Young Anoze, who will be gracing us, refreshing drinks, exciting gifts, face painting, bouncing castle, and much more. This purchase, call Amida at 0812-520-90, sponsored by our wonderful partners, Aspera Nigeria Limited, Bubba Foods and Beverages, Blythe and Junot Nigeria Limited, and many. Let's make the Children's Day an absolute blast. Mainland 98.3 FM Kiddies Party. It's all about putting a smile on your faces. See you there.
When the airwaves in your market and really stand.
Lagos.
Things seem anxious and uncertain. I understand the hardship you face. I wish there were other
nationhood and development. We have made for build the narrative about public service and accountability.
Mr. President, this Senate needs to know. Mr. President, this Senate needs to lend its voice to the plight of these people. Mr. President, there is nowhere I can say it except here. This is why I'm elected. If I cannot say these things on this floor, sir, I bet
they voted into office.
Look at us now, there is nothing. We are starving. Tinubu should please do something.
It's also important to having a Nigeria of everyone's dream. Join ᴏᴜᴜ Akínyode as it takes to task seasoned analysts, opinion makers, business professionals, and politicians. Your super dial, Mainland 98.3 FM will welcome you.
Welcome back, Mainland 98.3 FM, Situation Room here, privacy and protection in Nigeria. The bottom makes good of his threat to pull out of Nigeria. We might not be able to use Instagram, Facebook, or WhatsApp anymore. Do we have any traditional alternatives, especially with the $220 million fine that was slammed on Meta for the illegal use of Nigerians' data? There's a $220 million fine. Now, it's not only Nigeria that has fined Meta. We have countries like Ireland, the EU, and it's not just Meta that has been fined. So if anybody accesses Amazon, for example, they can harvest the card information of millions of Americans or attacks. Cyber warfare have been launched on countries. Protecting your data is important. Reading information before you click accept when you download an application is very, very important. And then we move to another aspect of the conversation where we focused on the education sector. We spoke to Dr. Peter Ogudoro, who is an education researcher and leader of the Nigerian teachers community. It's a global platform, so there are teachers from different parts of the world. And we spoke about the uncertainty, million out-of-school children. There's been a lot of vices because we now have a population of young people that believe education is a scam. That you do your masters, you do a PhD, to be medical practitioners, they are not paid, and you see them with their lab coats under the sun protesting just so that they are paid. How then do you convince the young ones that education is the way? Let's hear your thoughts on these two conversations. 0900-430 or send your message via our Facebook stream at Mainland 98.3 FM. We have our first caller for the evening. Hello, evening to you.
Madam, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, you have a quite good idea. I'm calling the television station about 15 to 20. He has said almost everything that I needed to say. He said, what we do in Nigeria is like putting the point to use CBT was that for all this exam, I think it's going to be a failure. Because I do some job, secretarial job, I go to cyber cafe, and then during the holiday, even weekend, we will be competing with these school children. Some of them, I ask them, again, in the SS2, SS3, and that they want to do apprentice. How possible you come to cyber cafe to come and learn computer that we are going to be using to do either jam or TUSAT or whatever? It doesn't work that way. So I pray that the mind should be sacked. for disappointing millions of students. It is unheard of. He has really managed them very well financially. And I want the country to take note of that. I said why and NECO not to lose CBT for this period. Because in the rural area, you need to use CBT for now for the next 10 years.
Thank you.
NECO and
the volume on your radio. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Please, can you turn down the radio or turn it off?
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Yes, your name
is...
All right.
I'm Badamasi from Sūrùlérè.
All right.
I appreciate. You see, the big man failed these things, the exams, are the children of those who send their children to quack private schools. Because they are trying, because the public school is nowhere to be found. So they try to, and the private schools, they pick their children to, they are all quacks. They can't even compare. So if you go to Italy, France, you have the public schools, and uniform education, everybody with equal rights. I have worked there, I lived there, and I've not seen. But when in Nigeria, you see this elitist, this private school, and living. Nigeria cannot go anywhere. Say your guest said we are still below $1,000 per capita income. That's terrible. We are now living. Even if we can make like at least $10,000 per capita income per head. And that is industrialization. We are nowhere. We are just buying and selling. You see, it's terrible. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for calling. We appreciate you for your insight. We still can. It's the problem of poor academic performance, immorality, drug and substance abuse from each other. Who is surprised about the poor mental ability of the youth, alarming abuse of drug and other dangerous substance when it's obvious that a great etc. have torn leadership both in education sector and followership upside down, with frustration causing a very misdirected society. The leadership is offering too little good example for the youth. Good evening. We can barely hear you. All right.
That your last guest. The man is too much. You're supposed with what the Minister of Education was saying. It was in the news in a jam. My sister, are you hearing me? In tackling exam malpractice. That's why people fail. Is that what? Is that what for not putting the appropriate measures in place for people to pass? He's telling me that why people fail is because they have done well in trying to minimize exam malpractice. Just imagine that. But in Nigeria, I thank you people. Bye bye.
All right, then. Good evening.
It's why calling you from Aᴅᴜᴜᴏ.
Nice to have
you. know, when we are talking reform, yes, it's one of it. In this country today, we parents, if we fail to fight corruption, our parents, it's our head to do. When we have somebody at the helm of our affairs who is so incorruptible, and that is for following the man of jam. You know, when you go to some secondary school today, some go to a special center, and when you now study that go through that school, they must find their exam. And whether you do well, you read well, you don't read well, you will come back to jam. And the man in jam is very honest somebody. When we see someone to credit, we must give that credit. The minister has spoken, he spoke very well. Technology is working now. Only what I will tell jump not to do next time is by setting the exam time at 6:30 a.m. their morning. What are those who live with very distance? So for me, go to a medical center, their mark now from our own is F9. Those who skate between 200 plus and the Oḻᴜᴜᴜ, their mark is A1 plus. When we say something good, we must appreciate. When it's talking bad, we must condemn it. All those children, some children don't want to learn. They based on they believe that when exam come out, they must try whether they like it or not.
Prince Wise, aside from the fact that we do have students who have become lazy, undoubtedly so, don't you think that there are problems within the education system?
We know. In my own world, I like daughter. I will tell her, this one you are pressed every time, he can never help you. What if he help you is to read your book to pass your exam. All the parents must wake up and tell our children the right thing to do. Lady Sage, good evening to you.
All right. Thank you. You very conveniently ignored my question. I do understand that it is multifaceted. There are students that are rather lazy and are looking for the whole how to get rich on social media. But is that the only problem? How about the inefficiencies within the education system, the poor funding, the welfareism for teachers, the brain drain, the labor market and its ability to accommodate the thousands of people that graduate? And I could go on and on and on and on. But it's okay. You send your WhatsApp or your text message number 2. Let's see if we can read a few. Spoke about the importance of data privacy and data protection, the need for sensitization, especially in rural areas. So that because we've seen many times where people will go to the banks and accuse the banks of taking their money. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't cases where there's been some level of fraud that happens with these banking institutions, but sometimes we're the ones who open ourselves up to this scam that happens to us. You know, you go somewhere and you use POS on the street, for example. There are some POS vendors who go and they save the number on your card. Economic implication that it would have on the country if Meta, as a result of the legal tussle that's currently ongoing with Meta and the federal government, will they pay the fine? Would there be some sort of compromise that will be reached? Because there's a lot of young people who have become, if you take away these online platforms for them, they become unemployed, they join the labor market, and the bracket of unemployed youths continue to widen. How do you think we can navigate this particular issue whilst also ensuring that the information of users are protected? And then we move to the education sector, where we had a conversation with Dr. Peter, who is an education researcher, and we spoke about the uncertainty of the education sector in Nigeria. We have social vices, we have the notion of education is a scam, where the most educated amongst us, at least a number of very educated people, are significantly poor. I mean, they are very low on the social ladder. But we have people who can barely express themselves in English language with a lot of money, not because they're business owners, but because they dance online and then brands are paying them thousands of naira. If for somebody who did not even finish Form 1 and you're wondering, where did I that we see that would encourage young people to become president or a governor or anything, is your school leaving certificate. That's SS3 exam. That's what the law as at now acts that really rule us in the country. They're very educated people amongst them, very educated people amongst them. At least Nasir El-Rufai is currently still even learning. I can't remember the professional course that he's doing at the moment, but I remember that the president had told him that when he finished that particular program, that he should not take that knowledge somewhere else. So they are very educated people amongst those that rule us. But the constitution is only telling them that all they need to do really is school leaving certificate. That's all they need. So how can you trust a person with just school leaving certificate to make together a system that will take us out of poverty? How are they supposed to put together proposals that would be inviting enough for foreign direct investment if the academic criteria is as low as a school leaving certificate? So what do we need to opportunity to also remind us about our children's party? Yes, because we have to leave the studio in a few minutes for the 2025. That's barely 2-3 weeks from now at the Mainland FM studio. We're charging 3,000 naira only per student, or per child. Although if you are coming as a family, there is a family discount that will be given to you. We're going to offer food, drinks, games, dance, and also the presence of the gracious women, Mama Rainbow, and also Gloria Anozie Young. They will be here for you to take pictures, an opportunity for young children who have an interest in broadcasting to come and familiarize, and some promos for us that we would play on radio just to celebrate the uniqueness of this particular children. You never can tell, you can form a little community of Mainland FM children where they share ideas. We can have little excursions for them regarding this particular Children's Day party. The number that you can call or send a WhatsApp message to is 0812 520 call the number 0708 040 6591 0708 040 6591. You can send all your inquiries there, and if you'd like to pay for your ticket, early bird is 3,000 naira. You can call that number, make your payment, and when you come that day, you'll be given a tag to access the venue. Well, this has been my time. It's been very great talking to you as always. Don't forget to join up at 5:30. After that, we have the sports crew coming up at Lounge. All right, stick around, enjoy the show. Milan 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos.